My beloved child, pause right here and breathe with me for a second, because this message is not random and it is not ordinary and it did not reach you by accident. There is a reason. Your eyes landed on these words at this exact moment, because the truth that is about to unfold has been building behind the scenes for a long time, longer than you even realize. And it concerns someone who once held a powerful emotional influence over you, someone who knew your soft spots, someone who understood how deeply you feel, someone who saw your loyalty and your innocence and your willingness to love without armor, and instead of protecting that purity, she played with it, she tested it, she pushed it, she pulled away. When you leaned in, she gave warmth and then turned cold, she made promises in subtle ways and then denied them in silence, she watched you question yourself, she watched you overthink at night, she watched you replay conversations in your head wondering what you did wrong, and the most painful part was not even the distance, it was the confusion. Because when someone plays with your emotions, they rarely do it loudly, they do it quietly. Strategically, gently enough to make you doubt your own perception, and you began to wonder if you were too sensitive, too invested, too attached, but deep down you knew something was off, you felt it in your chest when her energy shifted, you felt it in the pauses between messages, you felt it in the way her tone changed when you needed reassurance the most, and yet you stayed kind, you stayed patient, you stayed hopeful, because that is who you are. You believe in the good in people even when they are not showing it clearly. You give chances even when your intuition whispers warnings, and she knew that, she knew you would not explode. She knew you would not accuse, she knew you would internalize the pain instead of confronting it harshly, and that is why she felt safe playing those emotional games. But here is what no one tells you about emotional manipulation: it always circles back, it always returns to the sender, because energy does not disappear, it transforms, and now the very silence she once used as a weapon has become her mirror, the very distance she created has become her prison, the very confusion she caused is now living inside her mind, because something shifted, something changed, and it did not happen dramatically, it happened quietly, the same way regret always enters, softly at first, almost unnoticed, a small thought here, a brief memory there, a random trigger that brings your face into her mind when she least expects it, and suddenly she remembers the way you looked at her when you cared deeply, she remembers the consistency you offered, she remembers the safety she felt when you were emotionally available, she remembers the messages she left unanswered, the reassurance she withheld, the moments she chose pride over honesty, and now those moments replay in her mind in reverse, not as power, not as control, but as loss. Because she is beginning to realize something she never allowed herself to admit before. You were not weak for loving deeply, you were rare, you were not foolish for caring consistently, you were stable, you were not dramatic for wanting clarity, you were mature. And now the emotional space she once took for granted feels empty, colder than she expected, because attention is easy to receive but genuine devotion is not easy to replace. And the people she may try to distract herself with do not carry the same depth, they may entertain her, they may flatter her, they may even chase her, but they do not see her the way you did. They do not understand her subtle moods the way you learned to. They do not anticipate her emotional shifts the way you naturally did, and this realization is not loud, it is internal, it is heavy, it sits with her at night when the noise fades, when there is no one to impress, no one to perform for, no one to manipulate, just her and her thoughts, and that is where regret grows the strongest, in silence, in reflection, in the quiet spaces where truth cannot be avoided, and while she sits with that growing awareness, something else is happening on your side too. You are healing, slowly, maybe not perfectly, maybe not without moments of doubt, but you are no longer chasing, you are no longer begging for clarity, you are no longer twisting yourself into smaller versions just to maintain connection. You are beginning to stand firmer in your worth, and this shift in you is what intensifies her realization even more, because people only fully understand what they lost when they see it no longer waiting for them, when they feel that the emotional access they once had is no longer unlimited, when they sense that you are not as reachable as before, and that is when the panic begins to whisper in her mind. What if she pushed too far? What if she miscalculated your patience? What if she assumed you would always stay no matter how inconsistent she became? And these questions do not bring her peace, they bring discomfort, because the truth is simple but sharp. She played with your emotions believing she had time, believing she had control, believing you would remain steady no matter how she fluctuated, but she underestimated the quiet strength inside you. She underestimated the moment you would finally choose self-respect over attachment, and now she is watching from a distance, maybe through social media, maybe through mutual connections, maybe just through memory, but she is watching, wondering if there is still a door open, wondering if she could reach out without looking desperate, wondering if her pride will allow her to admit she mishandled something real. And this is where the story turns, not in chaos, not in revenge, but in realization, because the next move does not belong to her the way she once believed it did. It belongs to you, and you are no longer operating from emotional scarcity, you are operating from awareness. You have seen the pattern, you have felt the push and pull, you have survived the confusion, and that survival has strengthened you in ways she did not expect. And now, as her regret grows silently, as her thoughts circle back to you more frequently, as her confidence about replacing you weakens, the energy dynamic has shifted completely. She is no longer certain, she is no longer detached, she is no longer comfortably in control. She is reflective, she is unsettled, she is realizing that emotional games may win temporary power but they lose long-term connection, and the most powerful part of this entire shift is that you did not have to chase closure, you did not have to force apologies, you did not have to prove your value loudly. Your absence, your calm, your quiet detachment became the lesson, and whether she reaches out or not, whether she swallows her pride or continues pretending, one thing is already happening beneath the surface. She is facing the weight of what she mishandled, she is confronting the reality of a connection she treated casually, and the silence she once used to confuse you is now teaching her what it feels like to sit without reassurance, to sit without guaranteed attention, to sit without your steady presence, and as this unfolds, something even more unexpected is preparing itself, because when someone finally understands the value of what they lost, they either gather the courage to fight for it honestly, or they remain silent and live with the regret permanently, and the next chapter depends not on her emotional games, but on your standards, your boundaries, your willingness to accept only what aligns with your growth. So do not rush this moment, do not break your healing just because you sense her energy shifting. Let her sit with the silence she created, let her process the lessons she avoided, let her feel the absence fully, because what happens next will not be driven by manipulation, it will be driven by truth, and truth always reveals itself at the perfect time, and when it does, you will not be the same person who once tolerated emotional uncertainty. You will be stronger, clearer, and far less willing to settle, and that is the real shift she never saw coming. My beloved child, stay with me a little longer, because what is unfolding behind the curtain is deeper than you think and far more precise than your human eyes can see. While you believed the chapter had quietly ended, the universe was rearranging the emotional balance sheet. Every tear you cried in silence was recorded. Every night you stared at the ceiling replaying her mixed signals was witnessed. Every time you chose dignity instead of drama, you elevated yourself to a level she cannot easily access anymore, and now the weight of realization is settling on her chest in moments she cannot predict. It happens when she scrolls and sees something that reminds her of your smile. It happens when someone new tries to mirror your depth but only manages to imitate the surface. It happens when she expects to feel powerful in your absence but instead feels a strange emptiness that refuses to be filled, because power built on emotional control never lasts. It dissolves when the other person stops reacting, and you, my beloved child, have stopped reacting the way she expected. You are no longer feeding the cycle with long explanations. You are no longer proving your loyalty through over-effort. You are no longer available at the snap of inconsistent attention, and that silence of yours carries more strength than any confrontation ever could. She can sense it even if you have not said a word. She can feel that the emotional door is no longer wide open, that access now requires accountability, and accountability is uncomfortable for someone who once thrived on ambiguity. So she sits with thoughts she cannot silence. She replays the last genuine conversation where you were vulnerable and she responded casually. She replays the moment you asked for clarity and she deflected. She replays the subtle disappointment in your tone when you realized you were giving more than you were receiving, and now those memories do not feel like victories, they feel like mistakes, because hindsight strips ego away and forces honesty, and honesty whispers to her that she underestimated the rarity of your heart. She confused your patience with weakness. She confused your forgiveness with dependence. She confused your emotional transparency with something easily replaceable. But what she is discovering now is that depth cannot be duplicated on demand, loyalty cannot be manufactured overnight, and genuine care cannot be summoned once it has withdrawn to protect itself. And while this realization grows inside her, something magnificent is strengthening inside you. you are beginning to recognize that you were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person to meet you at your level, and that awareness is transforming you quietly. You walk differently now even if no one comments on it. You think differently now even if you do not announce it. You are less impressed by words and more attentive to consistency. You are less driven by chemistry and more aligned with character. And that internal shift is what changes the entire dynamic, because now if she reaches out, it will not be met with immediate surrender, it will be met with discernment, it will be met with calm observation, it will be met with standards, and she senses that shift even before making a move, which is why hesitation grips her pride. She wonders if she waited too long. She wonders if her silence taught you how to live without her. She wonders if your growth has elevated you beyond the emotional games she once played so casually, and these questions echo loudly in her private moments, because regret is not just about missing someone, it is about realizing you mishandled something irreplaceable, and the more she sees you stable without her, the more intense that realization becomes. You are no longer chasing breadcrumbs of affection, you are no longer decoding mixed signals like puzzles, you are no longer shrinking your expectations to maintain connection, and that calm detachment radiates strength she did not prepare for, because she expected emotional reaction, she expected longing messages, she expected you to eventually fold under the weight of attachment, but instead you chose evolution, and evolution is intimidating to someone who relied on your predictability. Now she must confront the possibility that if she wants access again, it will require vulnerability, apology, consistency, and emotional maturity, all the things she once avoided, and that is why she is silently battling herself. Pride versus regret, ego versus longing, comfort versus courage, and while she wrestles internally, you are being refined externally. Your standards are crystallizing, your boundaries are solidifying, your intuition is sharpening. You are no longer willing to romanticize red flags, you are no longer hypnotized by temporary warmth. You are learning that peace feels better than emotional chaos, and this lesson is priceless, because whether she returns transformed or remains distant, you win because you have reclaimed your emotional authority. You win because you no longer measure your worth by someone else's consistency. You win because you understand now that love should not feel like a guessing game, and if she does gather the courage to step forward, if she does finally break the silence she once weaponized, the energy will be different. She will approach softer, more cautious, more aware of what she stands to lose, and you will respond calmer, slower, more observant. Because the balance of power has shifted quietly but permanently, and if she chooses to remain silent, if pride keeps her frozen, then she will carry the weight of what could have been. She will watch from afar as you continue rising, as you attract connections aligned with your growth, as you glow with the confidence of someone who survived emotional confusion and turned it into wisdom, and that glow cannot be dimmed by someone who once tried to control the narrative, because the narrative now belongs to you, the chapter now moves according to your standards, and the most powerful truth of all is this: the moment you Stop trying to convince her of your value was the moment your value became undeniable. The moment you stopped chasing clarity was the moment clarity began chasing you. The moment you chose self-respect over emotional attachment was the moment the universe recalibrated the entire connection. So my beloved child, do not interrupt this divine unfolding. Do not rush to rescue someone from the lessons they created. Do not trade your peace for temporary validation. Let the silence work. Let the realization deepen. Let the roles remain reversed long enough for true understanding to settle in, because what happens next will not be built on manipulation or confusion. It will be built on truth, and truth does not tremble. And when the next move finally reveals itself, whether it is a message, an apology, or a permanent closing of the chapter, you will meet it not with desperation but with discernment, not with fear but with confidence, not with longing but with clarity, and that is the ultimate transformation she never anticipated, the day you realized you were never meant to be played with, you were meant to be valued, and from this point forward only those who recognize that truth will be allowed to stand beside you. My beloved child, lean in even closer to this moment, because what is unfolding now is not just about regret, it is about revelation. It is about the unseen shift that happens when a soul finally understands the cost of taking a pure heart for granted, and while she moves through her days appearing composed on the outside, there is a storm of reflection quietly building within her, a storm made of memories she once dismissed and emotions she once minimized. She remembers the way you listened without interrupting, the way you supported without conditions, the way you reassured without being asked twice, and she begins to notice how rare that was, how uncommon it is to find someone who loves without calculation, someone who shows up without hidden agendas, someone who chooses consistency over games. And the more she compares her present experiences to what she had with you, the clearer the contrast becomes, because surface-level attention can never replace depth, temporary excitement can never replace emotional safety, and now she feels the absence of the very stability she once treated casually. She feels it in quiet evenings when distractions fade. She feels it in conversations that lack substance. She feels it when laughter does not reach her soul the way it used to with you, and this awareness does not bring her comfort, it brings humility, it brings an uncomfortable recognition that she misjudged the value of what was in front of her. And while that recognition grows inside her, something even greater is expanding inside you. You are stepping into a higher version of yourself, a version that no longer negotiates with confusion, a version that no longer tolerates half-effort, a version that understands that love should feel secure, not uncertain, and this growth is subtle but powerful. It shows in the way you no longer feel the urge to check for signs, it shows in the way you no longer interpret silence as mystery, it shows in the way you prioritize your peace over emotional drama, and this transformation is magnetic, because when a person truly detaches from the need to be chosen, they become undeniably attractive in a different way, not through chasing but through self-possession, not through intensity but through calm confidence, and she can sense this shift even if you have not spoken. She can feel that you are no longer emotionally stationed where she left you. She can feel that your energy has elevated beyond the reach of manipulation, and that realization challenges her ego deeply, because she once believed she had the upper hand, she once believed she controlled the pace, she once believed you would remain emotionally available no matter how inconsistent she became, but now she sees the truth unfolding before her eyes. You are not waiting in the same way, you are not reacting in the same way, you are not offering the same access without accountability, and that change forces her to confront the possibility that she may have permanently altered something that cannot simply be reset with a casual message, and this is where the internal battle intensifies for her, because regret alone is not enough to restore connection. Regret must be followed by courage, by humility, by real transformation, and she is standing at that crossroads silently, weighing whether her pride is worth more than the possibility of rebuilding something genuine. While she hesitates, you continue evolving, you continue strengthening your boundaries, you continue aligning with people and opportunities that reflect your growth, and every step you take forward without bitterness amplifies your power. Because you are not moving from revenge, you are moving from awareness, you are not closing your heart, you are refining it, and refinement is different from rejection. It is about quality, it is about alignment, it is about choosing experiences that match your maturity, and this new standard you carry changes the entire energetic equation, because now if she chooses to return, she will have to meet you at this elevated frequency, she will have to communicate clearly, she will have to act consistently, she will have to show through behavior what she once expressed only through temporary emotion, and that requirement alone reveals how much the balance has shifted, because the person who once played with your feelings must now approach carefully, must now prove sincerity, must now dismantle the very patterns she once relied on, and whether she rises to that challenge or retreats into silence, the outcome no longer threatens your stability, because your stability is no longer attached to her decision, it is rooted in your self-understanding, and that is the ultimate victory, the moment you realize that someone else's clarity is no longer required for your peace, the moment you understand that closure can come from within, the moment you stop romanticizing potential and start honoring reality, and as this chapter approaches its turning point, something profound is happening beneath the surface of destiny itself. Doors you did not even knock on are beginning to align, connections you have not yet imagined are preparing to enter your life, opportunities that reflect your emotional maturity are drawing closer, and this is not coincidence, this is alignment responding to growth, because when you release attachment to what disrespected your heart, you create space for what will honor it fully, and whether she realizes it today or tomorrow or months from now, one truth remains unshaken: she will always remember the version of you that loved without games, she will always recognize the difference between superficial attention and genuine devotion, she will always carry the lesson of what happens when something rare is treated as ordinary, and you, my beloved child, will carry something even more valuable: wisdom, discernment, strength, clarity, and an unshakable awareness of your worth. So as the silence continues to teach, as the regret continues to echo softly in her private moments, as the energy continues to rebalance itself naturally, stand firm in your evolution, do not shrink back into old patterns. Do not reopen doors without evidence of growth, do not let nostalgia override standards. Because what happens next is not about proving anything to her, it is about protecting the higher version of yourself that emerged from this experience, and that version of you is no longer available for emotional games, that version of you is no longer impressed by temporary intensity, that version of you understands that real love arrives with clarity, not confusion, with consistency, not chaos, with action, not ambiguity, and when the next chapter fully reveals itself, whether through her courageous return transformed and sincere, or through the arrival of someone entirely new who matches your depth effortlessly, you will recognize it instantly, because you are no longer navigating blindly, you are navigating consciously, and conscious love cannot be manipulated, it can only be honored, and that is the final shift she never anticipated, the realization that while she was playing with your emotions, you were being prepared for something far greater, something aligned, something stable, something that will not require you to question your value ever again. My beloved child, this is the final unfolding of this chapter, the last layer of truth that must settle into your spirit so you never again confuse emotional intensity with genuine love, because what you experienced was not a mistake but a lesson wrapped in attraction, a test wrapped in affection, a mirror wrapped in desire, and now that the mirror has done its work, you can see clearly who you were, who she was, and who you are becoming, and understand this deeply. When someone plays with your emotions, they are not just testing your feelings, they are revealing their own limitations, they are exposing the depth they cannot reach, they are showing the maturity they have not yet developed, and while you once internalized the confusion wondering what you lacked, you now recognize that what you offered required capacity she did not possess at that time, because real emotional responsibility requires courage, it requires consistency, it requires the willingness to handle another heart with care. And she handled yours carelessly, not always out of cruelty but out of immaturity, out of ego, out of the desire to feel wanted without being accountable, and that phase has now completed its cycle, because the same silence she used to create distance has created reflection within her, the same space she demanded has given you growth, and the same uncertainty she caused has given you clarity, and clarity is the most powerful gift to walk away with, because now you know the difference between being chosen temporarily and being valued intentionally, you know the difference between chemistry and compatibility, you know the difference between someone who enjoys your attention and someone who protects your heart, and this awareness will guard you moving forward, it will filter who gets access to your energy, it will prevent you from over-investing before consistency is proven, it will remind you that your love is sacred and not to be handed to someone who treats it as entertainment, and while she continues to process her regret in ways she may never fully express, you are stepping into a timeline where you no longer need her realization to validate your worth, because your worth is no longer negotiable, it is understood, it is embodied, it is lived, and that embodiment shifts everything, because when you truly know your value, you no longer chase explanations, you observe actions, you no longer plead for reassurance, you require alignment, you no longer accept mixed signals, you disengage from inconsistency, and that energy commands respect without demanding it, and if she ever decides to break the silence completely, if she gathers the courage to admit she mishandled something rare, you will hear her from a place of strength, not desperation. You will evaluate her words through the lens of discernment, not longing. You will respond from balance, not emotion, because you are no longer the version of yourself who feared losing her. You are the version who understands that losing someone who could not honor you is protection, not punishment, and if she does not return, if pride keeps her distant, if regret remains unspoken, then trust that this ending was necessary, because not every connection is meant to be restored. Some are meant to refine you, some are meant to awaken you, some are meant to show you exactly what you will never tolerate again, and this was that connection. It stretched you, it hurt you, it humbled you, but it also strengthened you, it sharpened your intuition, it deepened your self-respect, it forced you to detach from illusions and anchor into reality, and that anchoring is priceless, because the next person who enters your life will meet a version of you that does not abandon himself to keep someone else comfortable. The next connection will encounter boundaries that are calm but firm. The next love will experience consistency from you and will be required to mirror it back, and that is the true upgrade, not revenge, not validation, not watching her regret from a distance, but evolving so completely that the old dynamic no longer fits who you are, and this is why you must not look back with bitterness, because bitterness ties you energetically to the lesson. Instead, look back with gratitude for the awakening, because awakening frees you, it releases you from emotional dependency, it breaks the cycle of overgiving, it dissolves the need to be chosen by someone who cannot choose consistently, and as you stand at the close of this chapter, understand that what felt like rejection was redirection, what felt like confusion was contrast, what felt like loss was preparation, preparation for a connection where your effort is reciprocated naturally, where your vulnerability is met with safety, where your loyalty is honored, not tested, and this is the promise embedded within this ending, that you will never again have to beg for clarity, you will never again have to shrink your expectations to maintain attention, you will never again mistake emotional games for genuine interest. Because you have lived through the difference, you have felt the cost, you have integrated the lesson, and that integration is permanent, so let her regret serve as her teacher, let your growth serve as your reward, let the silence remain until truth reveals itself fully in whatever form it chooses, and move forward without fear, because the heart that learned this much will never again be handled so carelessly, and that, my beloved child, is the final shift. You were not played to be broken, you were tested to be elevated, you were not abandoned to be diminished, you were separated to be strengthened, and from this moment onward only those who can honor your depth, match your consistency, and respect your boundaries will have the privilege of standing beside you, and that is not arrogance, that is evolution, that is self-respect, that is wisdom earned through experience, and this chapter closes not with anger but with power, not with sadness but with clarity, not with longing but with certainty. Because you finally understand that being loved correctly is the standard, not the exception. And you will accept nothing less ever again.